A poor student donated blood to a stranger, not realizing it would uncover a royal lineage that had been buried beneath layers of secrets and time. It was the kind of decision made in desperation, the kind that changes everything. Ethan Morgan hunched over his textbooks in the community college library, his threadbare sweater pulled tight against the December chill that the building's ancient heating system couldn't quite chase away. The 22-year-old's stomach growled, a sound that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. He pressed a hand against it, willing the emptiness to subside. 3 days until his next paycheck. $2.37 in his wallet. Half a package of ramen noodles back in his shared apartment. The numbers danced behind his tired eyes as he stared at the economics textbook, the irony not lost on him. Study harder, work harder. That had been his mantra since his mother died 3 years ago, leaving him alone in the world with nothing but her gentle voice echoing in his memory. Keep going, my love. Your future is waiting. But tonight, the future felt impossibly distant. A bright red flyer taped to the study carrel caught his eye as he gathered his books. Emergency blood drive. Compensation provided. The bold text seemed to pulse with possibility. $50 for a donation. $50 meant groceries for a week, maybe 2 if he was careful. His fingers trembled slightly as he tore off one of the paper tabs with the address. The Blood Donation Center occupied the first floor of St. Mary's Hospital, the fluorescent lights casting everyone in the same sickly pallor. Ethan filled out forms, checking boxes about his health history, trying not to let his pen linger too long on the emergency contact section. He wrote down his roommate's number, though they barely spoke beyond negotiations about the electricity bill. First time? The phlebotomist was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficiency in her movements. Ethan nodded, rolling up his sleeve. Is it obvious? You're gripping the armrest like it might float away. Her smile softened the observation. It's not so bad. Just a pinch, then it's done before you know it. As the needle slid into his vein, Ethan turned away, focusing instead on the television mounted in the corner. A news segment showed an elderly man being helped from a town car, surrounded by security. The caption identified him as Prince Leopold of Aldovia, visiting New York for specialized medical treatment. Poor old guy, the phlebotomist commented, checking the blood flow. They say he needs regular transfusions now. Some rare blood condition. Ethan made a non-committal sound, not particularly interested in the troubles of royalty. His world and the world of palaces and princes existed in different universes, separated by an unbridgeable chasm of privilege and circumstance. The blood bag filled, dark red against the sterile white of the room. Ethan couldn't know that the liquid flowing from his veins carried secrets encoded in its very cells. Secrets that had slumbered for generations. All done. Rest here for a bit, have some juice and cookies. The phlebotomist handed him a small paper cup of orange juice. Your blood type is quite rare, you know. A negative with some unusual antibody profiles. You're a universal donor, but with something extra special. Your blood might save someone who can't take just anyone's donation. Ethan accepted the juice, the sweetness startling against his tongue. Good to know I'm good for something. He murmured, the self-deprecation automatic. He collected his $50 on the way out, the bills crisp in his palm. Outside, snow had begun to fall in lazy spirals, transforming the grimy city into something almost magical. For just a moment, watching the white flakes catch in the glow of the streetlights, Ethan allowed himself to feel something like peace. That night, he dreamed of his mother. In the dream, she was hanging laundry in the backyard of their old house, sheets billowing like sails in the summer breeze. She turned to him, her face illuminated with a strange light. Some gifts, she said, take time to unwrap. He woke with tears on his face and couldn't remember why. 2 weeks passed. The $50 stretched as far as it could, then disappeared into the hungry mouth of necessity. January settled over the city like a weight, bringing with it a new semester and fresh worries about tuition payments. Ethan picked up extra shifts at the campus bookstore, his eyes burning from lack of sleep as he stocked textbooks that cost more than his weekly food budget. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Is this Ethan Morgan? The voice was crisp, professional, with the faintest hint of an accent Ethan couldn't place. Yes? He pressed the phone closer to his ear, stepping away from the shelving cart. My name is Dr. Helena Reeves from St. Mary's Hospital. I'm calling regarding your recent blood donation. Ethan's stomach dropped. His mind immediately conjured worst-case scenarios. Diseases, abnormalities, problems he couldn't afford to address. Is something wrong with my blood? Not wrong, Mr. Morgan, but we would like you to come in for some additional tests. There are certain markers in your sample that we'd like to investigate further. What kind of markers? Am I sick? The bookstore seemed to shrink around him, the fluorescent lights suddenly too bright. No, nothing like that. This is actually quite routine. We would compensate you for your time, of course. The mention of compensation loosened something in Ethan's chest. More money meant one less thing to worry about. When do you need me to come in? Would tomorrow morning be possible? The urgency in her tone belied her calm words. Ethan glanced at the schedule posted behind the counter. He was supposed to work, but he could probably convince someone to cover his shift. I could make that work. Excellent. 9 o'clock, the hematology department. Ask for me at reception. She paused. And Mr. Morgan? Thank you for your cooperation. The call ended, leaving Ethan with a strange sense of foreboding that followed him through the rest of his shift, back to his apartment and into uneasy dreams. The hematology department was on the 4th floor of the hospital, far from the bustling emergency room and the cheerful chaos of the pediatric ward. The walls were a soothing blue, the silence broken only by the soft beeping of machines and hushed professional voices. Dr. Reeves was not what Ethan had expected. She was younger than her voice had suggested, perhaps in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a lab coat over a sleek charcoal dress and a pendant that caught the light when she moved. Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming. Her handshake was firm, businesslike. Please follow me. She led him not to an examination room, but to a small conference room where, to Ethan's surprise, 3 other people waited. A man in an expensive suit stood as they entered, his posture military straight despite his age, which Ethan guessed to be around 60. Beside him sat a younger man with similar bearing, and a woman whose elegant attire seemed out of place in the clinical setting. Mr. Morgan, Doctor? Tours for me, Reeves said. I'd like to introduce you to Sir William Hargrove, personal physician to His Royal Highness Prince Leopold of Aldovia, Mr. James Blackwood, Royal Security Attaché, and Lady Catherine Beaumont, Royal Family Liaison. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his brain struggling to process the introductions. These people were connected to the elderly prince he'd seen on the television during his blood donation. But why were they here? Why were they meeting with him? Please, sit down. Sir William gestured to an empty chair across from them. We have much to discuss. Ethan lowered himself into the chair, suddenly acutely aware of his worn jeans and the coffee stain on his sleeve that hadn't quite washed out. I don't understand what's happening here, he said, his voice smaller than he intended. Sir William and Dr. Reeves exchanged glances. It was Dr. Reeves who spoke first. Mr. Morgan, your blood donation 2 weeks ago was flagged in our system for several reasons. First, you have a rare blood type that matches Prince Leopold's. He requires regular transfusions due to a hereditary condition, and compatible donors are extremely difficult to find. Ethan nodded slowly. That made sense. They wanted more of his blood for the prince. I'm happy to donate again if that helps, he offered. That's very generous, Lady Catherine said, her accent distinctly British. But there's more to it than that. Sir William leaned forward, his expression grave. When we processed your donation, we conducted standard genetic screenings. Your blood showed markers that are exceedingly rare, markers specific to the Aldovian royal bloodline. The room seemed to tilt. That's not possible, Ethan said. I'm just a regular guy from Brooklyn. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. My dad left when I was little. I barely remember him. What was your mother's name? Lady Catherine asked gently. Sarah Morgan. The name felt like a talisman on his tongue, protective and familiar. And before she was married, Sarah Collins, I think. She didn't talk much about her life before me. A memory surfaced. His mother's face tight with some unspoken pain whenever questions about family arose. The way she changed the subject, turned the conversation back to him, to the future, to anything else. Lady Catherine opened a folder that had been sitting on the table. We believe your mother may have been born Sarah Elizabeth Collins, daughter of Elizabeth Aldovian, who disappeared from London in 1976. She slid a photograph across the table. Ethan's hands trembled as he picked it up. The woman in the photo could have been his mother's twin. The same gentle eyes, the same curve of cheek and brow. But she wore clothes from another era, and her hair was styled differently than his mother had ever worn hers. Elizabeth Aldovian, Sir William continued, was the daughter of Prince Leopold's younger brother, Prince Thomas. She vanished at the age of 20 during a time of considerable political unrest. It was assumed she had been kidnapped, perhaps killed. The case was never solved. The words washed over Ethan like cold water. He stared at the photograph, at the woman who looked so much like his mother, and felt the foundations of his identity begin to crack. "This is crazy," he whispered. "This can't be real. We would like to conduct additional genetic testing to confirm our findings." "Doctor, Reeves said. "With your permission, of course." "And if it's true?" Ethan looked up, meeting their expectant gazes. "What then?" James Blackwood, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. "If confirmed, you would be recognized as a member of the royal family, albeit distant. Prince Leopold has no direct heirs. His health is failing. The line of succession is complicated. The implications hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Ethan might not just be related to royalty. He might be in line for a throne in a country he'd never even heard of until 2 weeks ago. "I need some air," Ethan said abruptly, pushing back from the table. I can't." "Of course," Lady Catherine said, rising. "This is a shock. We understand. Take all the time you need." She handed him a business card with a phone number embossed in gold. "When you're ready to proceed with the testing, call this number. Day or night." Ethan nodded mutely, pocketing the card. He left the room in a daze, navigating the hospital corridors on instinct alone, until he found himself outside, the January air sharp in his lungs. He walked for hours, his mind a hurricane of questions and memories. Had his mother known? Had she been hiding all these years, changing her name, building a new life far from palaces and protocols? And if so, why? What had driven her so far from her home, her family? The sky darkened. Streetlights blinked on. Eventually, Ethan found himself in a small park near his apartment, sitting on a bench dusted with snow. He pulled out his phone and, with fingers numb from cold, searched for Aldovia and Prince Leopold. Articles and images filled his screen. A small European principality nestled between France and Switzerland. A castle perched on alpine slopes. A royal family with centuries of history, known for their philanthropy and diplomatic influence. Prince Leopold, now in his 80s, respected internationally for his humanitarian work. And there, in a historical piece about the royal family's tragedies, a brief mention of Elizabeth Aldovian, the prince's niece who vanished in the 1970s, presumed dead. His mother, if Elizabeth had indeed been his mother, had been mourned, had been loved, had been searched for. Ethan closed his eyes, remembering the box of keepsakes his mother had kept in her closet. After her death, he'd packed it away, too grief-stricken to sort through the memories. Now he needed to see it again with new eyes. The apartment was empty when he returned, his roommate out for the evening. Ethan climbed onto a chair to reach the top shelf of his closet, pulling down a cardboard box labeled simply Mom. Inside were the pieces of her life she'd treasured most. Her teaching certificates, photographs of Ethan growing up, the novel she'd been writing in secret. And at the bottom, wrapped in a silk scarf, a small wooden box he'd never paid much attention to before. The box was locked, but the tiny key was taped to the bottom. Ethan's hands shook as he unlocked it. Inside lay a gold locket, tarnished with age, a folded piece of paper, and a ring bearing a crest he now recognized from his internet search. The royal seal of Aldovia. The paper, when unfolded, was a letter written in faded ink. "My dearest Elizabeth, if you are reading this, you have decided to seek the truth. I pray that day comes when the danger has passed, when you can return to us without fear. Until then, know that we search for you still, that we hold hope close like a flame against the darkness. Your decision to flee was brave, though it breaks my heart. Thomas would be proud of your courage, as am I. The child you carry deserves a life free from the shadows that have fallen over our family. The ring will always be your birthright and that of your child. When it is safe, when the men who threatened you are gone from this world, bring it home. You will always have a place here. With all my love and prayers, Uncle Leopold." Ethan read the letter 3 times, his vision blurring with tears. His mother had been running from something or someone. She had been protecting him, even before he was born. The locket, when opened, revealed a tiny photograph of a young woman, his mother, standing beside an older man with kind eyes and a regal bearing. Prince Leopold, decades younger. For the first time since his mother's death, Ethan felt her presence as if she stood beside him, a hand on his shoulder. The empty, hollow place grief had carved within him, filled with something new. Understanding. Purpose. Connection to a past he'd never known existed. He reached for his phone and the gold embossed card. Lady Catherine answered on the second ring. "I'll do the tests," he said without preamble. "And I want to know everything about my mother. Everything." 3 days later, Ethan sat in a private room at St. Mary's Hospital watching his doctor. Reeves drew vials of his blood for the comprehensive genetic testing that would either confirm or disprove his connection to the Aldovian royal family. Lady Catherine sat nearby, her presence a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of the moment. "The results will take approximately 1 week. Doctor," Reeves explained, labeling the last sample. "These will be processed at our most secure facility with the highest level of confidentiality." Ethan nodded, pressing a cotton ball to the crook of his arm. The prick of the needle was nothing compared to the piercing uncertainty that had accompanied every waking moment since their first meeting. "And then what happens?" Lady Catherine leaned forward. "If the tests confirm what we believe, that you are indeed Elizabeth's son and therefore Prince Leopold's great-nephew, there will be decisions to make. The prince has expressed a desire to meet you, regardless of the outcome." "He's still in New York?" Ethan asked. "Yes, at the Aldovian consulate. His health prevents him from traveling back to Aldovia at present." Her expression softened. "He was very close to your mother. Finding you has given him something he lost decades ago. Hope." The word echoed in Ethan's mind. Hope. When was the last time he'd felt that? Before his mother's illness, perhaps. Before the mounting bills and shrinking opportunities had narrowed his vision to mere survival. "There's something you should know," Ethan said, reaching into his messenger bag. He withdrew the wooden box, opening it to reveal the ring and letter. "I found these among my mother's things." Lady Catherine's sharp intake of breath was audible as she gently took the letter, her eyes scanning the faded text. "This is Prince Leopold's handwriting. And this ring," she carefully lifted it, examining the crest, "was given to Elizabeth on her 16th birthday. It was mentioned in the missing persons report filed after her disappearance. So my mother really was running from someone," Ethan said. "The letter mentions danger, threats." Lady Catherine nodded grimly. The late 1970s were a turbulent time for many European royal families. There were radical groups, kidnapping plots, assassination attempts. Elizabeth's father, Prince Thomas, had been killed in a suspicious car accident just months before she vanished. The official investigation concluded it was an accident, but Prince Leopold believed otherwise. Ethan finished, the pieces beginning to fall into place. Yes, he believed Thomas was murdered and that Elizabeth might have learned something that put her in danger as well. Lady Catherine returned the ring and letter to the box. "This is substantial evidence supporting your claim, Mr. Morgan. The genetic tests will tell us more, but I believe Prince Leopold will want to see these as soon as possible." Ethan hesitated, then closed the box and handed it to her. "Tell him I'd like to meet him too." The week that followed passed in a strange limbo. Ethan attended classes, worked his shifts at the bookstore, and tried to maintain the rhythms of his ordinary life while extraordinary possibilities unfolded in the background. James Blackwood, the security attaché, was a constant, subtle presence. A man in a dark suit who appeared at odd moments, watching from a distance, ensuring Ethan's safety while the test results were pending. On Friday, Dr. Reeves called. Her voice was carefully neutral, but Ethan could detect an undercurrent of excitement. "The results have come in, Mr. Morgan. We'd like to discuss them with you in person. Can you come to the consulate tomorrow morning?" The Aldovian consulate occupied a stately brownstone in the diplomatic district, its facade distinguished by the blue and silver flag of Aldovia fluttering above the entrance. Security was discreet but thorough. Ethan was scanned, his ID checked, his belongings examined before he was escorted to an elegantly appointed sitting room where Lady Catherine waited. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan," she greeted him, rising from her seat. "Thank you for coming. Before we proceed, I want to assure you that regardless of the test results, your privacy will be respected. Nothing will be disclosed without your consent." Ethan appreciated the reassurance, though it did little to calm the storm of anticipation within him. "Thank you. I'd like to know the results now, please." Lady Catherine nodded to a folder on the coffee table between them. "The full report is quite technical, but the conclusion is unambiguous. The genetic markers in your blood match those of the Aldovian royal family with a 99.8% certainty. You are, without question, the son of Elizabeth Aldovian, and therefore the great-nephew of Prince Leopold." Even though he'd been preparing himself for this moment, the confirmation hit Ethan with physical force. He sank deeper into his chair, a buzzing in his ears drowning out the room's hushed elegance. He was royal. He had family, living family, beyond the empty apartment and the memories of his mother. "Are you all right, Mr. Morgan?" Lady Catherine's voice seemed to come from a great distance. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. "It's just very real now." "Indeed." She waited a moment, allowing him time to absorb the news, then continued. "Prince Leopold has been informed. He has asked if you would meet with him today. He's eager to welcome you to the family, privately for now. Any public acknowledgement would come later, after you've had time to adjust to these revelations." "Yes," Ethan said, surprising himself with the immediacy of his response. "Yes, I'd like to meet him." Lady Catherine smiled, the first genuine warmth he'd seen from her. He'll be pleased. He's waiting upstairs in his private quarters." She rose. "If you'll follow me." They ascended a grand staircase to the second floor, where the atmosphere shifted from diplomatic formality to personal comfort. The prince's temporary residence was arranged like a home rather than an office, with comfortable furniture, family photographs, and the subtle scent of pipe tobacco lingering in the air. Lady Catherine knocked softly on a door at the end of the hallway, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Your Highness, Mr. Morgan is here." Prince Leopold sat in a wingback chair near a window that overlooked a small garden, bare now in winter but promising spring renewal. He was frailer than he had appeared on television, his hands resting on an ornate cane, but his eyes, the same deep blue as Ethan's own, were sharp and clear. The old man struggled to rise, waving away Lady Catherine's concerned step forward. "Let an old man greet his family properly," he said, his voice accented but strong. Ethan crossed the room, uncertain of protocol but moved by an instinct deeper than etiquette. He extended his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness." Prince Leopold ignored the offered hand, instead pulling Ethan into an embrace that smelled of lavender and wool and something indefinable, something that whispered of home and belonging. "The honor," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "is entirely mine, my boy." When he released Ethan, the prince's eyes were damp. "Sit, please." "Catherine, leave us. We have much to discuss, my great-nephew and I." Lady Catherine bowed slightly and withdrew, closing the door behind her. Prince Leopold settled back into his chair, gesturing for Ethan to take the seat opposite. "I have waited for this day for so long," he said. "To find you, to know that Elizabeth's child survived and thrived, it is a miracle I had almost ceased to hope for." "I brought something you might want to see," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. He'd retrieved the locket from Lady Catherine that morning. "This was my mother's." The prince's hands trembled as he accepted the locket, his thumb brushing across the tarnished surface with tender familiarity. "I gave this to her on her 18th birthday," he said softly. "Inside is a picture of you and her," Ethan finished. "I found it after I learned who she might have been." Prince Leopold opened the locket with practiced ease, gazing at the tiny photograph. She was so bright, so full of life, like a light in every room she entered. He looked up at Ethan, studying his face. "You have her eyes. Her spirit, I think." "I wish I knew more about her," Ethan admitted. "She never told me about her past, about you, about any of this." "She was protecting you," Prince Leopold said, closing the locket and returning it to Ethan. "The men who killed her father, your grandfather, were powerful, connected. They would have come for her and for you had they known you existed." "Who were they?" Ethan leaned forward, hunger for the truth overriding his natural reticence. "A shadow within our government. Officials who believed Thomas's progressive ideas threatened Aldovia's traditions. He wanted to modernize our constitution, expand democratic processes, reduce the monarchy's direct powers." The prince's face darkened with old anger. "They arranged the car accident. Elizabeth discovered evidence. Recordings, I believe. But before she could bring it to me, she was warned that she would be next. So she ran. To America," Ethan said, "where she became Sarah Collins." "Yes, she contacted me just once, about a year after she disappeared. A letter with no return address, telling me she was safe, that she had met someone kind, that she was building a new life." The prince's gaze grew distant. "I respected her decision, though it broke my heart. I continued searching quietly, but the trail had gone cold. Until your blood donation." Ethan absorbed this, piecing together the story of his origins. "The men who threatened her, are they still a danger?" Prince Leopold shook his head. "The last of that cabal died 5 years ago. Aldovia has changed. We have the constitutional monarchy Thomas envisioned. Had I known then that the danger had passed, I would have searched more openly for Elizabeth." Regret etched deep lines around his mouth. By then, it seems, she had fully embraced her new identity, And you never knew. She died of cancer, Ethan said quietly. 3 years ago. It was quick, only a few months between diagnosis and he couldn't finish. The prince closed his eyes, grief washing over his features. I am so sorry. To have found you only to learn I have lost her forever. His voice broke. After a moment, he collected himself. But she left you. Her greatest gift to the world. To me, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now, Ethan confessed. I'm just a college student. I know nothing about being royal, about Aldovia, about any of this. You do not have to do anything you don't wish to do, Prince Leopold assured him. But I hope you will consider coming to Aldovia when my health permits travel. I would like to show you your heritage, introduce you to your homeland. The offer hung in the air between them, glittering with possibility. Ethan thought of his struggling existence. The shared apartment, the mounting student debt, the constant grind of barely staying afloat. But more than the material considerations, he thought of the emptiness that had haunted him since his mother's death, the loneliness of being untethered in the world. I think, Ethan said slowly, that my mother would have wanted me to know my family. To know you, Prince Leopold's smile transformed his face, years falling away in his joy. Then it is settled. When I return to Aldovia, you will come as my guest. As family. He reached out, his gnarled hand covering Ethan's. Welcome home, Ethan Morgan Aldovian. The name echoed in Ethan's mind. Strange yet somehow right. A missing piece of himself he hadn't known was lost. Spring came early to Aldovia. Snow still capped the distant mountains, but in the valley where the royal palace stood, crocuses pushed through the softening earth, and birdsong filled the warming air. Ethan stood on the balcony of his suite in the family wing of the palace, watching gardeners tend to beds that would soon explode with color. 3 months had passed since the day his blood donation had changed everything. 3 months of learning, adjusting, discovering the truth of who he was and where he came from. Prince Leopold's health had improved enough for travel by late February, and Ethan had followed 2 weeks later, after wrapping up his semester with online classes and putting his few possessions in storage. The transition had not been smooth. There had been moments of doubt, of overwhelming intimidation in the face of centuries of tradition and protocol. The press had eventually learned of his existence, though the full story of Elizabeth's disappearance remained private, and the scrutiny had been intense. American student discovered as royal heir, the headlines had blared. Prince Leopold finds long-lost great-nephew. But for every difficult moment, there had been a counterbalancing joy. Discovering the library where his grandfather had spent his evenings. Hearing stories of his mother's childhood from staff who had known her. Learning the history of Aldovia, not from textbooks, but from the people who had lived it, shaped it, preserved it. And most precious of all, the quiet evenings with Prince Leopold, who insisted Ethan call him uncle in private. The old man's health was fragile, but his mind remained sharp, his memory a treasure trove of family history. He had given Ethan the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that he was not alone, that he belonged to something larger than himself. A knock at the door drew Ethan back inside. Lady Catherine stood in the doorway, her customary formality softened by the genuine regard that had developed between them over the past months. Good morning, Mr. Morgan. His Highness requests your presence in the Blue Room at your convenience. Ethan smiled at the phrasing. At your convenience. Was royal speak for immediately, please? I'll be right there, he said, straightening the jacket of the suit that still felt foreign against his skin. Another adjustment, trading jeans and hoodies for tailored clothes that befitted his new position. The Blue Room was one of Prince Leopold's favorite spaces, a comfortable sitting room decorated in various shades of sapphire and navy. The prince sat near the fireplace, a thin leather portfolio open on the table before him. Ah, Ethan, thank you for coming. He gestured to the chair opposite. I have something important to discuss with you. Ethan took the offered seat, noting the unusual solemnity in his great-uncle's expression. Is everything all right? Everything is as it should be, Prince Leopold assured him. But it is time we speak of the future. He tapped the portfolio. These are legal documents prepared by the Royal Council. They formally recognize you as a member of the Aldovian royal family and place you in the line of succession. Ethan's pulse quickened. Though they had danced around the subject in previous conversations, this was the first explicit acknowledgement of what his discovery might mean for the future of Aldovia. I have no direct heirs, Prince Leopold continued. After me, the crown would have passed to my cousin's son, Duke Raymond, a good man, though perhaps not ideally suited to lead Aldovia in these modern times. The prince's blue eyes, so like Ethan's own, held steady. With these documents, you would become second in line after Duke Raymond. I don't know what to say, Ethan stammered. I'm not prepared for something like that. I don't have the education, the experience. You have time, Prince Leopold said gently. I do not expect you to step into a royal role immediately. Duke Raymond is 57 and in excellent health. He will likely reign for 20 years or more after I am gone. A small smile touched his lips. Time enough for you to complete your education, to learn our ways, to decide if this is truly the path you wish to follow. And if I decide it isn't, Ethan asked quietly, then you will always be my family but not my heir. The prince leaned forward, his expression earnest. Ethan, I would never force this burden upon you. It is an offer, not a command. You have already given me more joy than I dared hope for in my final years by simply existing, by being Elizabeth's son. Ethan stared at the portfolio, at the papers that could rewrite his future in ways he had never imagined. A poor student who had donated blood out of desperation, now contemplating a path that might someday lead to a throne. May I think about it? He asked. Of course. Prince Leopold closed the portfolio. Take all the time you need, and know that whatever you decide, my love and support are unconditional. The words wrapped around Ethan like an embrace, healing something deep within that had been broken by years of struggle and loss. Unconditional love. Wasn't that, in the end, the greatest inheritance of all? Later that afternoon, Ethan walked the palace grounds alone, following a path that wound through gardens beginning to awaken from winter sleep. His mind tumbled with possibilities, with choices that seemed both impossible and inevitable. He found himself at the palace cemetery, a peaceful corner where generations of Aldovians lay beneath marble monuments. A fresh stone stood among the weathered markers, installed at Prince Leopold's command. Elizabeth Aldovian Morgan, beloved daughter, mother, princess. The dates of her birth and death framed a life cut too short, a story interrupted. Ethan knelt beside the memorial, tracing the engraved letters of his mother's name. I wish you could tell me what to do, he whispered. I wish you could see all of this. The spring breeze stirred the new grass around the stone, carrying the scent of earth and growth. In that moment, Ethan could almost feel his mother's presence. Not as she had been in her final days, weak and fading, but as she must have been in her youth, strong, brave enough to leave everything behind to protect her unborn child. Her voice seemed to whisper in the rustling leaves. Some gifts take time to unwrap. The same words from his dream months ago. The dream that had come the night of his blood donation, before any of this had been revealed. Ethan rose, brushing grass from his knees. Perhaps the greatest gift his mother had given him wasn't royal blood or a place in a succession line. Perhaps it was the courage to face the unknown, to rebuild from nothing, to find family in unexpected places. The decision crystallized within him, clear and right. He would sign the documents, not out of ambition or desire for power, but because it would honor both sides of his heritage, the royal lineage that flowed in his veins, and the resilient spirit of the woman who had raised him to believe in second chances. As he walked back toward the palace, the setting sun cast his shadow long across the awakening gardens, one shadow where once there had been none, connected now to a family, a history, a future full of possibilities. In the distance, lights began to glow in the palace windows, beckoning him home. Ethan quickened his pace, moving toward the warmth and the belonging that waited within. His path forward would not be easy, but it would be his own, a unique bridge between worlds that only he could build. A poor student had donated blood to a stranger, not realizing it would uncover a royal lineage. But in discovering his past, Ethan Morgan had found something far more precious than a potential crown. He had found his place in the world, a family connection that transcended death, and the strength to embrace whatever future awaited him, royal or otherwise. Some gifts indeed take time to unwrap, and some once opened change everything.